Okay, here we go. This is Hashem Yisbarach. I'm going to continue with the Heilig of Beis Yaakov, learning chassidus, deepest of the depths.
It's also very helpful.
Yeah.
When you're moving the cursor on the text.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's that way.
You can see which words I'm on. Yeah, sure.
See where you are. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
pretty easy to get lost.
Absolutely. Okay, here we go. So we've now turned the page. And the Rebbe is teaching us, V'hainu, ki hasar shel Yisrael, the angelic ministering angel of Am Yisrael, me'ir lahem shehu rak mekabel meHashem Yisbarach avuram. He shines out to us, it makes it clear to us that he's giving us all of this blessing, all of this divine life energy, but he's always making it clear to us that he himself is only a receiver for our sake. And this we mentioned yesterday, that's why this is reflected in the name of the angel Michael, that he's always saying, Mikael, who is like God. That he takes none of the credit to himself. He's just the middleman. And thereby Am Yisrael, in response, when they receive through him, but they're going to bless and thank Hashem directly. And in this way, because as he said earlier in yesterday's learning, that Am Yisrael, sometimes we do receive with no intermediary at all, but most of the time there is an intermediary called the angel Michael. But this intermediary is different than the other intermediaries for the rest of the world, because, as we said, he's always saying Michael, his whole existence is all about shining out that everything he's giving us is only received from Hashem. And we said yesterday also from a different Torah from the Beis Yaakov, where he says that this divine energy that we are privileged to receive and be conduits for is the divine energy that is saying yes to life, that is saying yes to creation in the deepest way. And this is also another reason why the energy we receive through Michael is not hidden. It's clear that he's transparent to his source, to use Reb Shlomo Zal's phrase that he used so often. He's transparent to his source because Michael agrees and wants there to be humanity, there to be creation. He's not just trying to only look back at Hashem and turn his back on the world. Like the other angels don't have the same positive attitude towards human life. And so, although they do send energy down here from Hashem, but they hide the fact that it's coming from Hashem because they can't understand how could it be that God really cares about this world. And so the task of Am Yisrael, being light to the nations, we're just talking about being light to the nations, is to bring this great light of God's desire for humanity, actually. This is the thing we're learning in the other shir yesterday, the Likutei Halachos shir. We're learning about that in depth from Reb Nassan. So since we're receiving from this energy, the divine energy through an angelic intermediary, but a special kind of angelic intermediary that is transparent to his source, that is always saying who is like God, and making it clear that everything he's giving us is not his, it's from God. So this gives us the ability to thank Hashem directly for everything that we're getting and to have a sense of a direct line to Hashem. And therefore, and in this way, Yesh L'Yisrael chelik b'hahashpa, we ourselves are considered to have a portion of the very flow of life energy we're getting from Hashem, because the intermediary is not really an intermediary, is shining, and our blessing of Hashem, a bracha, the word bracha means, and this is something actually the Talmud of the Vilna Gaon, Rav Chaim of Volozhin, in chapter 2 of Nefesh HaChaim, it's really like should be required reading. It's absolutely incredible, his whole explanation of what a bracha is there, that it does not just mean saying thank you to Hashem. It means a blessing means to magnify, to actually expand the energy of Hashem in the world. He makes a very crucial distinction between Hashem and Hashem's name, right? God himself, you can't bless God, right? God is infinite. There's no such thing as, but God's name, Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach Lolam Lo Maya, God's name can be blessed. How much we perceive Hashem, we can have an effect on this. And our blessing of Hashem brings more energy into the world. And so because we have this very special intermediary of the Malach Michal, and even sometimes, as we saw yesterday, we do have mamish direct flow from Hashem, even not through the Malach Michal, but because of this, we're able to bless Hashem, and thereby our prayers and our blessings, our mitzvahs elicit more of this divine energy in a focused, relational way, not just kind of like in a background sense of like the laws of nature, but in a real loving, focused way of relating. It's because of this special relationship through the Malach Michael that Am Yisrael have a chelik. We actually have a portion in the flow of energy from Hashem, and this is why in the pasuk in Sefer Shmuel is where the Navi is telling David HaMelech in the name of Hashem. Because David HaMelech has said, I want to build a Beis HaMikdash. And the Navi is telling him in the name of Hashem how happy Hashem is with this idea and promising that in the great future, he told David HaMelech as a response that in those days was an amazing thing. You would daven, and then the Navi would come over the next day and tell you what Hashem's response is. It's pretty amazing. And none of this happened to I don't know if that happened to every Jew, but it happened to David HaMelech. And there were certainly lots of Nevi'im around, so I'm sure that it happened to many people, not just David HaMelech. That when you really, really would daven, some Navi might kind of wake up and stir and come over to you and say, this is coming down to you from Hashem. So the Navi told David as a response to his prayer to build the Beis HaMikdash, not only is Hashem saying how much he loves the idea, but he's also saying that in a promise for the Mashiach, that there will be a time where Hashem will plant us in our land. As we said, this is the verse we started off with. We spent time on it before. He'll plant us in our land in a way that is so deep. V'zeh unetativ. This is what that pasuk, when it says that Hashem's promise is to plant us in Eretz Yisrael, plant us in the place of the Mikdash. Shehu lashon netiyah hashayeches ba'ilan v'chanal. The word planting that is related to a tree. And as we said before, that the tree becomes a conduit for the life energy of the earth, so too we will be planted in Eretz Yisrael and become even more a conduit of Hashem's life energy. Then the pasuk continues, it says, V'shachein tachtav, we will dwell, each person in their place. Hainu ki achar she'yavo ha'adam al makomo, that once we already come to our actual makom, to that amazing concept of a space, of the existential space that is called Levish, this Reshus HaYachid, the very private existence that we each are given, that amazing space of who we are. The Yira HaMechuvan Atzmo, and we are able to actually perceive the purpose of my creation. Why am I here? Masha bara so Hashem Yisbarach, that Hashem created him with for that purpose. Az yeveshachen tachtav. Then each person will dwell in their own, sitting under their own place. It's an interesting thing underneath himself, kind of. This is a very, very interesting thing that you find this also the pasuk about the man. Shavu ish tachtav. Each person should sit in his own place, under his own place. Rabbi Nachman in Torah, pretty sure it's Torah Yud in the Likutei Moran, he says what this means is that you should be under your own place. That means you should look up to yourself. Amazing idea that, wow, there's this role in the world called Leibish 100, and wow, I get to be that guy. And sort of look up to your own, be kind of humble before your own self. Very amazing idea. The Lomahatz, that here he's emphasizing that you'll sit in your own place, not on the sides. It won't be that you'll, like we said before, that amazing analogy about the captain of the ship learning to navigate the winds that blow from the sides and so on. No, we're going to be in our own place. Lomahatz dadim, not from the sides. Kiba olam hazeh shehu tuma, in this world, which is the place of impurity. If we would know, in other words, because that's the question that's kind of lurking behind this whole Torah. Why can't we just know why we're here now? Why do we have to wait until Mashiach to know this? Why can't we just know? And so he's saying here, if it would be known, become known to a person, the purpose of his creation. The nefesh, with that clear knowledge of its own self, it would not be able to handle living in this world. It wouldn't want to live here. It would be overly drawn back to its creator. And therefore, Hashem set up that this world is going to have a hiddenness and is going to have what he calls hispashtus, a spreading out too much in one direction or another. And why? We're going to have an attraction to this world. We're going to have, because it's not clear to us exactly spiritually what we're doing here, why we're each here. So we're going to become taken with this world. mehem kavod shamayim, and through that process of involving ourselves with this world, we're going to be able to bring out greater honor to heaven. That Hashem shines out to us from the land of Seir, that's the land of Esav, and appeared to us in the land of Paran, that's the city, that's the place of, the mountain of Paran is the place of Yishmael. And only for this reason is it that this nefesh agrees to live in this world. Now here he's going through that was a very dense and chunky few sentences that very hard to, what is he saying? So Reb Nassan, the way I understand it, Reb Nassan in Likutei Halachos and Hilchos Arev, Halacha Gimel, he says we're born in this world and we're so distant from Hashem, we barely even have a memory of Hashem. And he says the soul's first kind of feeling is, get me out of here. Like the baby's born, like the psychologists speak about birth trauma, that just being born is already traumatic. We're already traumatized just by being born. So the concept being that the soul at first just wants to go back to Hashem. But then you taste the mother's milk and you start to eat food and breathe the air. And the soul recognizes in a kind of a distant way that its desire for these things, its desire for this world, the desires that we have for clothes and for an apartment and for certain colors that we like, music that we like, places that we like to be, friends that we meet, all the different experiences that we have. He says the soul is not just the body recognizes, this feels good, this tastes good, this looks good, etc. The soul tastes something also. It tastes like what's that? It tastes like what he's speaking about here, that there's this honor of Hashem that is going to be revealed through my life. It is this mission that I'm on over here in a crazy, wild way, requires not being fully aware of what the mission is and kind of groping our way through. It requires this, but we're okay because we can sense in a distant way, like a twinkling from afar. When we eat that apple, when we come into an apartment and we say, this is the apartment I'm supposed to buy. We meet, this is the spouse I'm supposed to marry. This is, etc., etc. When there's something that lands and the soul becomes comforted by these things, actually. Not all the way, but enough that it'll agree to be here in the world. Enough that it will agree. What he's saying here is that if the mission and if the sense of everything would be overly clear, we would have such a profound sense of how connected we are to Hashem, we would just want to run right back to Hashem.
We would also not have freedom of choice. We wouldn't have.
Exactly. Excellent. That's definitely also extremely important and foundational concept over here. That the very hiddenness itself is giving us the ability to choose and the dignity of choosing and forming our own lives instead of having everything be kind of already so obvious and so clear and kind of done already, prefabricated Torah and mitzvahs. Instead, we get to really fabricate, we get to really live. And and so in a certain ways, we're going to see the cycles of Shemitah and of Yovel, they play a role in this, that these are ways, and also of the 6 days of the week and Shabbos, where while we're in a reality of hiddenness and free choice, of the free market and so on, but Hashem gives us these mitzvahs of Shabbos, of Shemitah, of Yovel that limit and create openings for that higher consciousness to be with us even so. So it's a kind of like this very beautiful harmonizing energy that comes to us through observing these mitzvahs. Do another couple lines. Aval asid, but in the great future, sheyavor Hashem yisbarach ruach hatuma min haaretz, when Hashem will take away the spirit of tuma. The tuma has to do with hiddenness. Tuma comes from the word, like Rashi says in Chumash, timtum halev, the plugging up of the heart. Right? When the world will be kind of like unplugged, and we'll be able to hear and see and perceive and the tahara. The azai kedisa, then it will be, as the Gemara says, tzaddikim yoshvim, v'neni miziv hashchina. The tzaddikim will just be sitting right, sitting in the most profound way, and each person their own place, and enjoying the ray of the shechina of the divine presence. V'hainu chayim miguf hamachuvan shenivru bo. It doesn't mean that we each get life from the generic presence of God. It means that we each get the life energy from the very essence of that purpose for which we were each individually created for. That's why it says that they're yoshvim, just like it says v'shachein tachtav, that we dwell in our, not like Olam Hazeh, where we're figuring everything out based on the sides, based on comparisons, based on the way we respond and so on, but it will be the essence of who we are, and our life energy will be totally plugged in to each one of us in our own unique and exquisite way. Then we will not need to receive any more from the sides, meaning from the enclothings. Rather, it will be that each person will sit mamish, like so to speak, under their place. And Gewalt. So Baruch Hashem, very heavenly Torah here. Okay, so now as we move into the halacha side, I want to bring for you guys Rambam. I forgot that we at the very first year we were talking about is shemittah deraisa or derabanan. So here, and what do we need for shemittah to become biblical? So we're going to see this Rambam, and I'll read to you from Reb Chaim Kanievsky Sefer, and then we'll get to the questions that were asked yesterday, and then we'll learn a few more new halachas. Mishagala Shevet Reuven v'Shevet Gad, from way back when the tribe of Reuven and the tribe of Gad and half the tribe of Menashe went into exile. This is in the times the first Beis HaMikdash. Batlu Hayovlos, and from that time on, we lost the mitzvah of making Yovel. Shenemar ukrasim jura ba'aretz lechol yoshveya. The pasuk by the Yovel year says we have to call out freedom in the land to all who dwell upon it. So bisman shekol yoshveya aleha. This is where we learned out this idea that we need all of Israel to be here. And the Rambam adds in another requirement. Vehu shelo yu me'urbavim shevet b'shevet. And this is when it's in such a way where we are not mixed up, the tribes are not mixed up and intermingled. Elakulan yoshvin kasiknan. Each tribe is in their exact spot. Okay. And then in the next halacha, he links up Yovel to Shemitah, where he says, only in the time, Bisman she Yovel noheg, only when there is a halacha, when the mitzvah of Yovel is in effect, which is only when we have everyone here and each of the tribes here in its own place, only then do you have the din of an Eved Ivri. Like nowadays, there's no such thing of being a Hebrew slave. The din bate arechoma, and the special halachas having to do with walled cities in Eretz Yisrael. Right, the walled cities for Purim, that's different because that's rabbinic. We're talking about having to do with people who are Metzora, a leper being sent out of the city. Vedin zdei charamim, vedin zdei chuza, other halachas, and noheges shvis ba'aretz. So here we see when there's a yovel, then there's shvis. So only when you have what's needed for yovel will shvis also be biblical. And on this, Reb Chaim Kanievsky says as follows. Ve'im nisharu rov mikol shevet. If you have the majority of each tribe in Eretz Yisrael, mikri shenisharu kol yoshveya. That's considered enough. It's considered as if you've got everyone here. Because otherwise, what are you going to do? If one Jew goes on vacation to Italy, then suddenly all the mitzvahs become rabbinic. It doesn't mean all mamish. It means the majority of each tribe.
Do they need to be dwelling, the members of the tribe, together in the correct area? How? Yeah. I mean, we know who's in which tribe. We know the tribe of Levi. That's it.
That's right. So that's a major problem, and he's going to say in a minute. So first of all, just to get the majority thing in, he says majority of each tribe is enough, but there is also an opinion. That's the opinion of the Ramban and other Rishonim. But there is the opinion of Rabbeinu Tam that if you have the majority of the whole Am Yisrael, but you don't have the majority of each tribe, but at least you have some, you have even a minority of each tribe, that's also good enough. If you have a minority of each tribe, is also good enough. That's a machlokes Ramban Rabbeinu Tam. But the thing is, we need everybody to be in their own place, like you're asking. So Reb Chaim says, Zeh od t'nai. This is another condition. Even if you have all the tribes here, and mamish every yid is absolutely here, we still need each tribe to be in its exact inheritance, in its place, as they were divvied out in the days of Yeshua. But if not everyone is sitting in their exact place, as it was in the times of the second temple, then it will not work. Even if all the Shvatim came back. And then he says, further, he says, even though he said before that you need like it was in the Bayis Sheni, he says there's actually a complication. It says, Bizman hazeh lo shayach klal chazar shvatim alad masam. There's no way really for us to, even if we could figure out where each tribe needs to be, because we don't know the yichus. Like you just said, she'enanu bekim beyichusei shvatim. We don't know who comes from Naphtali, who comes from Menashe, who comes from Afim Hainu Yodim. And even if we did know, he says, Kevan de la'asid lavotis chalik chaluka chadasha. The Gemara says of Baba Basra that in the times of the third temple, Eretz Yisrael is actually going to be divided up in a new way, in a brand new way. One of the big differences I paid a special attention to, because I'm a Levi myself, is that the Levium will not be going into 48 cities that are scattered about Eretz Yisrael, but actually the tribe of Levi will have its own section. Very fascinating thing. And to the Asi level, since there's going to be a whole new Chalukah, there's no way for us to know exactly how that's going to work. And we don't know the Yichus, we don't know each person, which tribe they come from. And so it's pretty much until Mashiach comes, Shemitah and Yovel and everything that's listed here is not going to be happening on a biblical level.
The tribes being in their place, Shemitah is dependent on that?
Yeah.
Not the rabbinic, that's Shemitah Deraisa, not the rabbinic.
Yes, exactly. This is just to explain what would it take for Shemitah to become biblical. Right now, there definitely is Shemitah rabbinically. But what would it take to upgrade? It takes too much. It takes Mashiach pretty much. Right?
Well, it takes everyone's Tudat Zehut to have.
Right. That's the idea, that it's actually written in Shulchan Aruch that Eliyahu Hanavi is going to, in the future, tell everyone which tribe they're from, and fix all the issues of mamzerim and all the family issues. Sorry, I just turned my phone on silent. All right. Good. So I had a really great time looking up yesterday's questions and looking into them. Let's find a page over here. First of all, the question, Reb Nassan's, you asked about trimming a hedge or a bush that's getting in people's way, right?
Yeah.
So here, let me just find where I wrote a lot about it. Okay. There's that one, and then there's, yeah. So cutting away bushes, when it is for, you need to have two requirements, or maybe even three requirements in order for it to be permitted. One is that your kavana makes a difference. Do you mean for the bush to grow better by cutting it? So it has to be that your kavana is not to make it grow better. That's one thing. The second thing is, it has to be that you don't cut it in a professional kind of a way, the way that people who have the know-how of how to make it grow better, you have to cut it differently than they would cut it. Which What's that?
You don't hire a gardener.
You don't hire a gardener, right? And exactly. So if you're doing it yourself, exactly, then he says you are good because the chances are so low. Even if you by mistake happen to do it the way they would do it, no one's going to think that you know what you're doing, and it's and you're since your kavana is clearly just to cut away an obstruction, then it is therefore fine. So it has to be that your kavana is not to make it grow better, that the way you actually cut it is not the way that a professional would cut it, and it has to be that you cut it in a way that is clear to the onlooker that you're doing it just for the aesthetic reason or the reason of it not scratching you while you walk through your garden's gate or whatever it is. So if it has to be clear to the onlooker, has to be non-professionally done, and has to be that your kavana is not to make it grow. If you've got all three, you're good.
Thank you.
Yes. And similarly to for Aryeh's question about cleaning off the dust on the leaves of a tree on Shemitah, what happens if there's like some part of your garden gets like very dusty and cobwebby and you just don't like how it looks? So can you clean it off? So the truth is, I'm really glad you asked this question because in the fine print of the Sefer, they're bringing down that there's a big argument actually about what the word me'avkim in the Mishnah in Shvis, which is Perek Bet, Mishnah Bet, what does it mean? So there's me'avkim.
Me'avkim.
Right? So the word avak means dust. Me'avkim means to dust. But what does that mean? One opinion is it means to clean off the dust. Another opinion actually is to put dust onto exposed roots. Right? So those are very different things, right? And the Mishnah says it's forbidden rabbinically to do to do this act called la'avek, ma'avkin. So the opinion of the Aruch is a very early Rishon, like 10th or 11th century, who was among the early Rabbanim in France. I think he was in France or Spain when the Jews first were moving into European lands. And he wrote a dictionary called the Aruch. It's still used today, where he took, because in Bavel, so long as the Jews were living in Bavel, well, people spoke Aramaic, and so the words of the Talmud and the Mishnah were clear enough. It was like an actual used language. But now they moved to countries where people didn't use those languages. That's why you find also in Rashi, who was another early Rishon who lived about 100 years after the Aruch. Rashi often gives these old French translations because people didn't know Hebrew or Aramaic as well. So the Aruch says me'avki means clean off the leaf. But the Tosfos Harosh in Moed Katan Daf Gimel says that it means to cover the roots, and therefore, actually, says the Tosfos Harosh, not only does he say it doesn't mean this, but he says that to clean off a leaf is actually permissible on Shvis, on Shemitah year, because it's not considered to be something that causes the tree to grow better, but rather it's just taking away something that could cause damage to the tree. And that's a logic that makes quite a bit of sense, that you're really just preventing damage. You're not watering, you're not adding to the tree, you're just allowing the sunlight to reach you. It got covered in dust. All you're doing is cleaning off the dust. And in fact, Reb Chaim Kanievsky in his Sefer Derech Emunah Perek Aleph Halacha Hey, in his Bir Halacha, he seems to agree that it is just not forbidden at all. Not like this Sefer says, Reb Efrati's Sefer, the Talmud of Rav Elyashiv, who says it's usher to clean off the leaf from its dust. Rav Chaim seems to hold that it's just totally mutter. He seems to hold like that Tosas Arosh, that it's le'ukmei ilana. It's something that is done just to keep the tree from being damaged and not considered to be something that's helping the tree. And so since you have the opinion of the Tosas Arosh and what seems to be Rav Chaim Kanevsky also that it's totally mutter, and you're doing it not for the sake of that the tree should flourish, you're doing it because it's aesthetically bothersome to look at a tree covered in dust and cobwebs and everything. So it would seem that if you do it also in a way that's not, professional, whatever that means, that's not in a way that, if you don't hire your gardener to do it, but you yourself just go there with some rags or whatever, and you just wipe it all down, it would seem to be permissible, since your kavana is not to help the tree, but rather just for your own aesthetics. And plus you have those who hold that it's permissible even if your kavana was to help the tree, because all it is doing is taking away something that would damage the tree otherwise. So Baruch Hashem, those are yesterday's two questions. I will continue a little further with a few more halachas. Baruch Hashem. This also applies, by the way, to cutting branches off of a tree for your schach on Sukkot, right? Same idea. So long as you're not, for instance, if you take all your branches from only one side of the tree, that will make it clear that you're not doing it to make the tree grow better, because that's clearly a non-professional kind of pruning, right? And everyone will see that it's done, and you're clearly doing it just because you need the wood. It is therefore permissible also to cut off branches for the purpose of schach.
Are there issues then with this kodesh skach? And I guess skach becomes kodesh anyways once we use it, but anything to treat the skach differently than we would treat it in other years because it's...
Right, no, the answer is no, because wood does not have kedushas shvis. Wood does not have, we're going to talk later, what the holiness of shvis applies to and how it works, but the general rule of thumb is it has to be davar shehana aso ubiuro baim ke'achas, something that where the pleasure that you get from it and its destruction happens at the same time. That pleasure and destruction happening at the same time is the kind of abstract halachic principle of what eating a fruit is, right? So wood, you can burn it to cook food, but that's considered that the burning itself is not the pleasure. It's always a step removed. It's always a step removed. So the destruction, or if you like using it for schach, you might be getting pleasure directly from the wood, but the wood is not being destroyed in that process, right? It's just up there providing shade. The wood isn't getting destroyed while it's providing you the shade, right? Only thing that could be similar would be the burning of wood, and the burning of wood is always one step removed. That the pleasure you get is from the food afterwards, so it's one step removed. So it's not that the pleasure and the destruction are not as well.
What about the heat if you're cold?
Right, and so that's how it works. Okay, Gewalt. It's 10 to. Is it time now? 1 second. What's the actual time?
Did you hear my question, Labish?
No. Did you ask another one? Go ahead. No, I missed it.
What about heat? If you're cold and you're burning wood and you're getting the heat because you're cold.
Right. Very good question. There's a Gemara about that where they're talking about being machmir with that, and it's not coming to my mind precisely. I'll have to give you once again, Bezos Hashem, tomorrow, an answer to that, because that would be like you're saying. Then you're getting pleasure at the same time as it's being destroyed. So maybe that's like eating. So if it would be true, then we'd have to say that wood has kedusha shvis. I know the answer is going to be no. There might be some chumrah I'm remembering a story in the Gemara, but I'm not remembering it clearly enough right now to give it over. But wood, as a rule of thumb, does not have kedusha shvis. Only edible things, things that are perfumes, as we'll see in later classes, and things that are dyes, and could be also things that are used for laundry, as like a soap. This is something we didn't see when we were learning the Mishnayos, but it comes up in the Gemara in Shvis and is mentioned in Halacha also. So we'll see about that. There's also some, in addition to dyeing, it could be that cosmetics, also things that are used to paint a human face, could also be. We'll see everything. Let's do a little more here about the garden. Let's see which page I want to do over here. Sorry. Okay, so
what about medicines and ointments?
Excellent question. So again, let's leave it for now because we're going to see all of this mamish in detail. In other words, conceptually speaking, the halachas that we're learning about shemittah can be divided into two. One is, what are those acts, and this is where we are now, is what are those acts that are called working the land, whether biblical or rabbinic? Which things are permissible, which things are forbidden to do on shemittah? That's what we're in now. And then the second half, might even be more than half, might be like 2/3, because that's what we have to deal with, is which things do we have to treat differently on shemittah that they are considered to have the holiness of shvis, and then how is this going to affect our kitchens? How is this going to affect what we buy, right? How is this whole thing going to work for us in the future? That's a second halachic whole framework that we'll get into, and we'll do it step by step. So I don't want to get right now into the idea of ointments and perfumes and so on. Shalom Naama. Welcome.
Hi.
So we're just almost at the end of the shir, but this if you go on YouTube and you write Yeshivat Simchat Shlomo Shemittah, Shemittah, you'll get this. The whole recording of this shir is up there, and the previous 2 or 3 are there too. Okay, where were we? This general rule that we spoke about, which is that the things that the rabbis forbade to do, that are above and beyond the very few biblical prohibitions of what we're allowed to do to work the land, all of the many rabbinic prohibitions are only when you're causing the tree to thrive. But if what you're doing is preventing damage to a tree, then almost always it's permissible. And therefore, we said before that tying a plank of wood to a tree to help it to grow straighter is generally speaking forbidden. But if you have a young sapling and it's dangerously leaning over and it's in trouble, then there's room to be lenient. Ken yesh makom lahatir tmichas etim daki v'rach mikre, if that in a case where you're not to tie the plank of wood to them, they may suffer real damage. So if it's just to make it grow better and stronger, then it's forbidden to do it on the Shemitah year. But if you can see it's leaning over dangerously and it may suffer some damage, then you can be allowed to do it even on the Shemitah year. Of course, the best thing is do it before Shemitah. We, Baruch Hashem, still have a few weeks, and it needs to be done before. Okay, great. So, Arya, remind me what your question was. Oh yeah, wood. Burning wood What? Okay, I'll get to that question tomorrow. B'ezrat Hashem. And thank you all for coming. Welcome,
Sunday.
Nama, and Hashem will
There's no
continue
shiur.
tomorrow.
Are there
3 p.m. is
shiurim on Friday?
What's on? Oh, not tomorrow. Right, tomorrow's Friday. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. We'll continue Sunday.